All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about something pretty wild today. Can an AI actually grade your essay? I mean, really understand it. We're going to break down a really cool scientific study that basically set up a showdown between two different AI methods to see which one could come out on top. So, think about this for a second. Could a robot, an algorithm, grade your next essay better than a human teacher? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, but it's happening. The real question is, could it be more fair, more consistent, maybe even more accurate? That's exactly what we're digging into.
Okay, so first things first. Why are we even talking about this? Why bring AI into grading at all? Well, it all starts with what we could call the essay grading problem.
We all know essays are super important, right? They're how we learn to think critically. But let's be real. For teachers, grading a mountain of them is a huge, huge task. It takes forever. And, there's always the human factor. One teacher might love an essay that another one just thinks is okay. That's subjectivity. And when teachers are swamped, it's really tough for them to give that detailed, personal feedback that actually helps us get better.
So, with that problem on the table, it's no surprise that researchers started looking for a text solution. And that's where this really cool field called automated essay scoring, or AES for short, comes into the picture.
So, what is AES? Well, at its core, it's about using AI, specifically something called natural language processing, which is basically the magic that lets computers understand language like you and I do, to automatically read, analyze, and score a piece of writing. The whole point is to make grading faster and hopefully a lot more objective. Okay, so how does a computer actually do this? It sounds complicated, but the study breaks it down into 4 main steps. First up, text preprocessing. The AI basically tidies up the essay, gets rid of punctuation, makes all the words standard. Then n-gram analysis. It chops up the text into key phrases. Could be single words, pairs of words, you get the idea. Now, step 3 is the big one, vectorization. This is where the AI does something amazing. It turns the entire essay into a string of numbers, like a secret code called a vector. And finally, similarity scoring. The system just takes the student's vector and mathematically compares it to the vector of a perfect model answer.
Now that vector thing, how does that work? It uses something called a vector space model. And honestly, the best way to picture it is to imagine a giant, massive map. Every single essay gets turned into a single dot on this map. And here's the cool part. Essays that are talking about the same things with similar meanings, they end up clustered really close together. Essays that are totally different, they're way off in another part of the map.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. The researchers didn't just pick one way to do this. No, they set up a proper showdown. A tale of two methods, an AI face-off to see which technique could grade an essay most like a real live human teacher.
So, in one corner, we've got Jaccard similarity. And in the other, cosine similarity. Think of Jaccard as the simple, direct one. It's all about counting how many words overlap. Cosine is, well, it's a bit more sophisticated. It's the one that uses that giant map we talked about, looking at the direction of the essays to get at their actual meaning. Let's really dig into what that means.
All right, so Jaccard's similarity. You can just call this one the word counter. It's super straightforward. Imagine a Venn diagram. It just looks at the student's essay and the model answer and counts up the identical words they both used. Then it divides that by the total number of unique words across both essays. That's it. Simple word overlap. Cosine similarity, though, is a whole different beast. Let's call it the meaning mapper. This goes right back to that giant map. Instead of just counting words, it measures the angle between the two essay dots. If the angle is tiny, it means they're pointing in almost the exact same direction, topic-wise. This is how it can figure out that an essay talking about a car is pretty similar to one talking about an automobile, even though the words aren't identical. It's getting at the meaning.
So there you have it, the word counter versus the meaning mapper. Which one do you think is better at acting like a human teacher? That's the million-dollar question this whole study was designed to answer.
All right, the results are in. The researchers took 150 actual essays from a junior high citizenship class, got a teacher to grade them the old-fashioned way, and then let both AIs have a crack at it. And what they found was, well, it was pretty clear.
But before we see the winner, how did they even keep score? They used a fancy-sounding metric called root mean square error, or RMSE. Don't worry about the name. The only thing you need to remember is this. It measures the size of the AI's mistake. A big RMSE score means the AI was way off from the human's grade. A small RMSE score means it was almost spot on. So the goal is to get the lowest score possible.
And here it is, the final result.
This chart shows the error score for both methods. And remember, lower is better. It's pretty obvious, right? Cosine similarity, the meaning mapper, had a much lower error rate. That means its grades were way closer to the human teacher's scores across the board.
So why the big win for cosine similarity? Well, the study explains that it's because it's smarter than just checking if a word is there or not. It also looks at how often a word is used. That gives it a much richer understanding of what the essay is actually about, its focus, and all the little nuances. It just gets the meaning in a way that the simple word counter never could.
But hold on, here's a totally surprising twist from the study. The researchers tried having the AI look at single words, then pairs of words, then even triplets. You'd naturally think that analyzing longer, more complex phrases would give you a better result, right? Nope. Turns out the AI was most accurate when it was just looking at single words. Just goes to show, sometimes simpler really is better.
Okay, so we have a clear winner in our AI showdown. But what does this all mean for the classroom? Let's zoom out and look at the future of grading. Look, there's no doubt this tech has some incredible potential. I'm talking more efficient, more consistent, and maybe even more objective grading. That could free up teachers to do what they do best, actually mentor students one-on-one. But, and this is a big but, the study is very clear about the risks. We have to think about ethics, like data privacy, and we need to know exactly how these AIs are making their decisions. And maybe the most important takeaway is this. This has to be a tool to support teachers, not a tool to replace them. That's absolutely critical.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question to chew on. This study proves that AI is getting scarily good at understanding something as complex and human as writing. So if it can get this good at grading essays, what's next? What other parts of the classroom, of learning itself, are about to be completely transformed? It's a future that's definitely not as far off as it sounds.